accepting our invitation and being here. Friends, Russia, earlier the Soviet Union, have been great friends with India. They're all Indians, and those who are not Indians would know the importance of friendship between India and the Soviet Union and now the Russian Federation. So, His Excellency, then we'll take it from. His Excellency Denis Alikov, Russian Ambassador to the Republic of India. Is the senior most serving India affairs expert in Russian Foreign Service. He previously worked here in Delhi. His Excellency also served, among other postings, as senior officer in the Office of Russian Foreign Minister and as an aide to the Chief of Staff of the Government of Russian Federation. He had been for many years a close confidant of late Ambassador Alexander Karakin, a venerable milestone figure in Russia-India relations, widely honored in both countries. And like late Ambassador Karakin, His Excellency regards India as his quote-unquote karma bhumi. His Excellency holds an MA honors in history from Moscow State University. He is married to Diana Alikova and they have teenage twin son and daughter. And interestingly, both of them were born in India. See, may I now invite you to make your opening remarks? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I'm glad that I have this opportunity to meet with you and discuss the topical issues, Russia-India ties, which, as you all know, have a legacy to them. And more often than not, unfortunately, get misinterpreted. I would outline very briefly the basic ideas, the principles that lie at the basis of our relations, which I truly believe are not simple slogans, but very real basic ideas. Such principles like the quality of relationship, mutual trust, mutual benefit, the true understanding of each other, and very importantly also the non-interference in domestic relations with each other. You know, Russia may not like something that happens in India. India I suspect, may not like many things that happen in Russia, but we do not teach ourselves and do not sermon up each other or on those dislikes. And this principle have been very consistent in our relations, like the other that I mentioned. We have never had any political problems in between us, never tried to compare each other with other countries, never advocated a zero-sum game in international relations, never displayed dislike to each other that the partner develops and deepens the relations with other countries. It goes without saying. It comes natural, and it should be so. Noteworthy, Russia, and I would like to recall that we have established the diplomatic relations between us in April 1947. The independence was declared in August, but the relations we had established in April. And this is also indicative of the special character and very, very special legacy of our relations. But even before that, Russia, Soviet Union at that time, very strongly supported the Indian independence movement. And later on, we developed a very close and diversified partnership supporting the industrialization of this country, large-scale capacity building in defense, energy, nuclear power, agriculture, education, science. One of the first Indian institutes of technology in Mumbai was launched and established with us together. And ultimately, we have reached the current multi-dimensional, special and privileged. This is the official formula I name the special and privileged strategic partnership between us. At present, we continue to diversify and develop the relations in all of these areas. We very actively participate in various groundbreaking defense deals, and particularly in the programs that the Indian government has launched and has as a priority for itself. The Make in India program, Make in India, Make for the World, the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, not only in defense, but in other areas as well. You may know that we have a very successful joint BrahMos joint project, which was launched way back in 1991, but it is a very, I would say, appropriate, very vivid example of the Make in India idea. We continue with the construction of the Kudankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu. In space, we work together on the engines program, on the Indian manned mission, which is going to happen very soon, I believe. Cooperate in various satellite navigation programs. In other areas of science and technology, we do have joint programs. We have the established task forces and joint groups on various topics that are in the, at the forefront of technological development, like the quantum technologies, quantum computing, big data, bio and nanotechnologies, and many other. In the area of education, we have been fortunate to welcome around 20,000 Indian students annually. We are looking towards the increase of this number, but we're also looking and would be willing to increase the number of Russian students. The education system in India develops very fast and is one of the best in the world, as we see. We have diverse ties in various humanitarian areas, culture, the cultural cooperation, people-to-people exchanges, and unfortunately, we don't have such big and influential Indian diasporas like India has in the US or in Great Britain. Nevertheless, we have this asset in between us, which was the very welcomed way back during the Soviet Indian times. The Hindi-Russian highway, Indian cinema was very much popular in Russia, and till date, these sentiments are very much in life in Russia everywhere. We used to say that we have the national consensus in between us about the friendship. This consensus is still very strong in Russia, and I'm absolutely sure it will get even stronger in the coming years. Currently, as you all know, the case in point is the increase of bilateral trade, thanks to the large supplies of Russian commodities to India. But we are keen to keep this, to maintain this favorable momentum, and to start increasing Indian exports to Russia. There is a huge demand for that, for a large number of goods and services, and for India it would be a very opportune time to invest, to export to Russia, something that we are looking forward to and support. On some problematic issues in problematic areas like the payments and financial transactions. We work closely with the Indian government and various concerned bodies and organizations in a dedicated manner, in good spirit, to create the workable mechanism in the current circumstances, so the trade relations, so that the investments and the economic cooperation continues unhindered. Such projects like the North-South corridor is very much in focus for us. It's a multinational project involving Iran and other countries. And I think we will have very good progress in taking it forward in the coming years. We have on our agenda the mutual understanding that we need to have a free trade agreement. We are speaking about the free trade agreement between India and the Eurasian Union, in which several countries besides Russia participate. Some of the Central Asian republics and Belarus also, the Caucasian states. Internationally, our priority remains to support the promotion of just and equal multipolar world, as you also see, the BRICS expansion, the SCO expansion. All this reflects the growing interests of the developing world, the global south, towards a more equal, more just, inclusive global governance, in which the so-called collective West, if I may, continues to dominate. India's cloud rises very rapidly, has risen. There is no turning back. India is going to become stronger and stronger. It has to have a legitimate voice in the governing bodies, be it in the global economy or politics, be it the United Nations, the Security Council. Let me also remind that Russia has consistently supported the full membership of India in the Security Council. And so all such developments, recent developments in the world testify to this understanding and this notion and the necessity to raise the voice of the global south in world affairs. At the G20, I would say, unfortunately, in the Indian presidency experiences a very strong pressure from some countries who, in Russia's opinion, hijacked the G20's agenda, making the Ukrainian crisis, the Ukrainian conflict, as one of the topical ones. Since the formation of the G20, there has been an agreement and a consensus. It's a consensus-based consensus-based group that it focuses and should focus on economic and financial matters. But since the last year, it was decided by some members of the group to discuss political issues within the G20. Something that we do not accept, something that we oppose, and something that the majority of the G20 members agree with. But again, if there is a consensus to discuss political issues, the majority is okay with that. Some are not, and Russia is not okay with that. And if we have a consensus, it should be the consensus to the end. If there is no consensus on something, then the items without the consensus should be removed, taking into account that political issues had never been discussed in G20. So we will, I'm sure, discuss this and other topics later on, but in our perception, the success of the G20 lies and rests very largely on the goodwill of those who insist on some non-consensual issues on the agenda. So we are hopeful. We very openly, very strongly have supported the priorities and the agenda that India has put forward in the G20, and are hopeful that the outcome will be the one that India aspires for and India is hoping to reach. But in any case, I believe that the summit that is going to happen very shortly will be a huge success for India and for the whole world, regardless of the formal outcome that we all are looking forward to. Okay, and I have a para on Ukrainian conflict. The developments that have been in focus for Russia, for Ukraine, and for the world. I'm open for a very candid discussion. I will only say that despite the assertions from the other side, it is Russia that is open to peace. Ukraine consistently being the has consistently went on record saying that they do not want negotiations. The West continues to supply weapons to Ukraine. Last year in March, we had agreed. We agreed with Ukraine on the broad peace formula, which, as was revealed later on, was derailed by the US and other Ukrainian supporters intentionally. And so all the claims and accusations against Russia, and claims that it doesn't want to end the conflict, do not have any basis for them. The so-called Copenhagen format that Ukraine has launched recently is something that we do not see as a basis for finding the solution, since in that format the so-called 10 formula of Zelensky is being discussed. And this formula has nothing in it but a set of ultimatums towards Russia. And besides that, we do not participate in that forum. If somebody wants to find a solution to the conflict, I think we all need to sit and discuss and together agree on some acceptable, mutually acceptable solutions. So to conclude, I would come back to our goals to the Russia-India relations and express confidence that these relations, that India as such, as a country, as a power, as a global power, that Russia as a global power will continue to matter in global affairs. Our relations will continue to be effective for the good and will serve the best of interests of our two nations and the world at large. And now we can have a discussion if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Excellency. Now, question and answer session. Ayanjit, can you organize one more microphone and keep that guy this side? And those of you who want to ask a question, kindly raise your hand and wait for a microphone to come, and then ask your question. Identify yourself and ask a question. Yeah. Hello there.
When Russia stopped the war between the Russia and Ukraine, what will be the deadline, and what Russia doing for stopping the war?
Sorry, didn't get anything. Can you come again, please?
Microphone is there, here.
Ambassador Shudhiranjan from Bloomberg. If you could give us an understanding on the India-Russia payment system that is being discussed, and where is it stuck, and when do you see it being operationalized? If you could give us an understanding on that, sir.
Yeah, Siddhant.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Madhav Sharma, and I have interest in studying strategic alliance. And my question to you would be, what will be Russia's position if if a conflict breaks out between China and India? Thank you.
Your Excellency, good evening. I have no question to ask, but a comment to make. And that is that India will never forget how Soviet Union and Russians, our best friends, stood by us in all our difficulties and crises. And I'm sure what you said, our friendship will continue to blossom. Thank you so much.
Hi, so good evening. Rishabh from Times Now. China has just released standard map for 2023, which a lot of countries in the region have objected to, including India. What's Russia's official stand on the standard map of China 2023?
He'll answer the question, matter question. After the question and answer. So you go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, sir, I'm Sanjay from Arab News. My question is, to what extent has payment traffic between Russian and Indian banks established itself after negotiation on the ruble-rupee payment mechanism were broken off? Related to that is that what role does the Russian Suburb Bank or the VTB Bank, which have a branch in India, play in payment process between Russia and India?
Your Excellency, I am Professor Neelam Mahajan Singh from Doordarshan News, which is the premier government channel of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Like all of us, we are great fans of Russia. And like President Putin, I want to ask you a slightly lighter question because, you know, the press conference is getting very serious. So President Putin is very famous and very popular with the Russian women. If he had come to India, it would have been very nice for us and we would have really enjoyed. But now you're having the foreign minister coming, Sergei Lavrov. You think he will be putting in President Putin's viewpoints in the coming G20 and sharing India-USSR relationship as it existed before?
So my name is Purnima Sharma. I want to ask, has Russia supplied any defense hardware to Pakistan recently?
Hi, sir. Thank you for addressing the gathering. My name is Tulika and I'm representing Bangladesh News Press Express today. I have two questions, quick questions. One is about the Ukraine war. Sir, I'm here. My name is Tulika. The first question is about the Ukraine war and about the G20 leaders' declaration. Has Russia settled for what it wants in the declaration? If not, what is it that you would like to settle for? The other one is about Mr. Lavrov. He's coming via Dhaka to the G20 summit. What will be the key points of discussion there? And I'm asking this especially in the context of the fact that the US Deputy Secretary of State for Regional Security, Mira Resnick, is also visiting Dhaka just a couple of days before. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Your Excellency, I am Dinesh Sharma, freelance journalist.
do you foresee any kind of direct intervention of India to find a solution of the Ukraine crisis?
Response to those questions, take the second round.
Thank you very much. Very,
What India and Russia do for
I think I'll cover your point as well. Thank you. Very topical and interesting issues you raised on the payments. You know that the U.S. doesn't want Russia to use the USD in transactions with foreign countries. Well, this is the tool they have in possession, and I think ultimately will suffer from such indiscriminate use of this unique opportunity that they still enjoy. But speaking about our bilateral relations with India, we have established, and that we had done before the Ukrainian crisis. We have an established mechanism of the rupee-ruble trade and transactions. So the mechanism does exist, and it's very much workable, but it doesn't work properly. Why? Because the Indian financial communities, Indian banks, are reluctant to use it, fearing the secondary sanctions or some kind of consequences if they start doing business with Russian banks, even knowing that it's not going to be how to put it? It's even knowing that the dollars in such transactions are in no way involved. So the U.S. has no, even if they wanted, has no leverage to disrupt or somehow, be a party to the bilateral financial transactions as national currencies as they have in U.S. Even knowing this, the banks are reluctant to do that. I have already spoken about it. The overcautiousness is the main the idea behind the fact that the mechanism that we have, a workable mechanism, has not been launched in earnest so far. But gradually, eventually, we register a positive development, so to say, and the change of attitude towards supports this mechanism, and in future, I believe it will be a very much efficient way to do the transactions, not only with Russia, but with other countries as well. So there is a trend already of expanding the use of Indian currencies in relations with other countries, in promoting the Indian currency on the global markets as a tool for transactions, promoting to the other countries in the Middle East, with neighboring countries, India's neighboring countries. So there is a tendency, there is a trend for that, and it will grow, and it's good, and it's good. And here again, we may speak about the see the signs of the this multipolarity, as we call it, right? When not only the selected ones, but all who has the capacity and the will to actively participate in global affairs, in this case, in global financial affairs. This is something that will gain momentum, and I'm confident that we will. There are signs of that already, but we will, launch the ruble mechanism in earnest. A very good question on the India-China potential, hypothetical. Hope it will never happen, but then hypothetically, some kind of large-scale conflict happens in between India and China, what position Russia would take. I would put it like that our relations with India, as our relations with China, are very wholesome, so to say. We will never sacrifice our relations in case of any unfortunate developments in the world. We will never sacrifice our relations with India. And this I would like to particularly stress, be it any kind of developments. And it also includes and relates to our relations with Pakistan and Indian-Pakistani relations. We do not develop our relations with any country at the expense of other. What we are very much hopeful of and advocate for is the improvement of relations between India and China. But having said that, we do not interfere into the disputes and contradictions that India has with China. We uh, have been always very truly respectful of the position India has said on many occasions, and China has said on many occasions, that the boundary issue, the disputes India and China have in between them, is the bilateral issue. And Russia has always kept it like that, not allowing itself to express its intentions or desires or whatsoever in words or in deeds, with the exception of the desire for the improvement of relations. We have a trilateral mechanism between us, Russia, India, China format, which was formed well before BRICS, by the way, and had been quite active prior to 2020. But after the Galwan incident, as you know, the dialogue between India and China got very much complicated. But we are hopeful. We are very, very keen to continue with the trilateral format, which, in our opinion, would be a very helpful tool to build confidence, to build the basis for the improvement of relations between India and China. This will certainly happen sooner or later. I'm absolutely convinced in that. But the sooner the better. On the newly published Chinese map, we have not made any statements on that. But for your information, if some have not noticed, they have some discrepancies, I would put it like that, on the Russia-Chinese border as well. We don't, what is the English phrase for that? We don't make an elephant out of it. Don't exaggerate this issue with the Chinese, not at all. And as we have noticed, India doesn't exaggerate this issue as well. It doesn't change the situation on the ground. I have not quite understood the question on Sberbank, on the payments mechanism, but probably I have asked partly the question you had. Thank you for your remarks on Russian men. Lavrov is married, by the way. So he's coming, but but he is a womanizer. Both, I believe, both, I believe. He's very popular and he's very fond of you. On supplies to Pakistan, somebody asked on supplies of what? Supplies of defense equipment. We do not supply defense equipment to Pakistan. There were way back a singular supply of helicopters, 3 or 5 helicopters, which Pakistan promised to us to use on the Afghan direction. We have the defense cooperation with India. We don't have defense cooperation with Pakistan. As I said on declaration, the situation is complicated, obviously. There is no consensus on that. On one particular point of agenda, on the Ukrainian tariff. So if there is no consensus, if there is the consensus on all other points of agenda, and there is no consensus on the only one, what shall we do in this situation? Tell me. We should remove this non-consensual item from the agenda to agree on very topical, on other very topical issues. Topical for the whole of the world. The climate change, the sustained development, the financial crises, food crises. On all these items, we have the consensus. We have finalized them, except the Ukrainian tariff. And who insists on retaining it? Russia does not. Well, let's discuss it. Who hides the head in the sand? We do not do that. We are open for a discussion, very much open for a discussion. There is the Security Council for that. There are other for that. G20 had been established for resolving financial and economic problems that the world faces, not geopolitical problems. And by the way, if you counter me and say that the energy situation or the food crisis has a direct bearing on the economic situation at large, I would respond that it's not the Ukrainian crisis that has triggered the energy volatility or the disruption of food and grain supplies, not the crisis in Ukraine at all, not the Russian actions over there in that part of Europe at all. It's the sanctions that the West has opted to implement that disrupted all that has a direct bearing. A very simple comparison with well, let's take the U.S. invasion in Iraq. Was there a disruption any kind of disruption? No, there was not, because nobody imposed sanctions against the US. If there were sanctions, there would certainly be the same kind of influence as we see now. So the main supply of wheat and grain to the world markets has for several years been Russian, not Ukraine. Ukraine supplies only 3% of grain. And when now we are accused of disrupting and walking out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, this is something also very hypocritical, because the initiative doesn't work. Because the second part of it, that presupposes the participation of Russian banks in transactions for food supplies, which presupposes the allowing the ships to, Russian ships to use the ports and supply the grain. This part doesn't work, and this particular part is the main reason why there is the shortage of grain supplies worldwide. Not because Ukraine supplies something or not. Yes, it does. And by the way, it continues by land. So, you know, when we see the situation in totality, in a complex, the picture somewhat changes. And when we follow some the simplistic line of the Russia unprovoked aggression in Ukraine. If somebody and many continue to say so, it only reveals the simplistic nature of such people and the lack of understanding the complexity. I have said many times, what do you think? Somebody got mad in Russia and decided before going to sleep, okay, let's do this tomorrow. No, nonsense, utter nonsense. This was a very thorough, a very thought out, a very unfortunate, but unavoidable decision of our leadership. And there is a very long story to that conflict and to that decision. Why was it taken? How the situation aggravated to such a point? Sometimes, such people like the Canadian Prime Minister, they surprise very much with their very simplistic, approach towards the situation. And what is more amazing is that such people, they truly believe what they truly believe and think that they have a true understanding of what is happening. And yes, to conclude with the latest question on India's India's direct role and some kind of involvement in in finding the solution. We would welcome any serious proposals and ideas towards the resolution, be it from India or from other countries. To my knowledge, India has not proposed any kind of ideas. It stands for the quickest resolution, for the cessation of hostilities. We do not have any contradictions on that, and the cloud and the weight of India will certainly help if it decides to put forward some kind of ideas. But of course, they should be aimed at finding the true solution to the conflict. I would repeat that such ideas like President Zelensky has, they do not help. There are proposals from the African countries. There are various proposals besides Zelensky formula. We are open to any, but so far we have not seen a set of ideas that would truly help to find the solution and to start negotiations. The ideas that could be basis for such negotiations, we have not seen such so far.
Good evening, Excellency. I'm Preeti, an independent journalist. You just talked about the grain issue, which is generally there in reports that Russia withdrew from the grain deal. Now, this is an issue which has really affected the developing countries and the other poor countries also, You mean to say that Russia is not the one who is withdrawn from the grain deal? This is my first question. And secondly, that how do you then propose, how to go ahead that the world may not suffer with the paucity of grain in this scenario? Thank you.
I said that there are two parts to the grain deal. So one through the Black Sea was implemented. We have ceased our participation in that part because the other part involving the Russian companies and the Russian grain supplies, that part never was launched and never worked. Now the United Nations is trying to do something, but all they can is to address the G7, who's the main culprits, the US, some Western countries who imposed sanctions against Russia. So all the UN can do is to address them and request to display goodwill and make necessary steps to allow the Russian part of the grain deal to work. The UN doesn't have any other means other than, pleading and requesting. And the US, Great Britain, Germany, they have rejected so far such requests from the UN and have been reluctant to take the necessary steps to allow the other part of the deal to work. So Russia has walked out from one part, but the crisis is the consequence of the reality that the other part has not worked so far. This is the, if I could explain properly.
Ambassador, my name is Anil Sharma. I represent a defense journal. That's me. I have two questions. So it's good to hear that Russia is open to any kind of peace proposal. But what does it signify? Is that from a position of strength? Does it mean that Russia has attained its strategic objectives of the special military operations? That's my first question. Number two, this is increasingly becoming a war of attrition. I mean, the Ukrainians are getting attacked, and in turn now the drone attacks on the Russian territory are increasing. So if there is no peace proposal, where do you really see this war going? Thank you.
Ramanand, then Rezaul.
Ambassador, this is Ramananda Sengupta from Stat News Global here. So my question is regarding the two transport corridors, the Vladivostok-Chennai corridor and the International North-South corridor. Where exactly are we on those two? And I believe as part of the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor, there was some talk of India trying to build a sort of a twin city for Vladivostok. Has anything moved on that?
Rezaul.
Ambassador Rezaul Laskar from Hindustan Times here. You have spoken several times about the need to invest in Indian companies to invest in Russia. You have also spoken about certain sectors that you had identified. What, if any, are the reasons this is not picking up pace? And secondly, if I may just ask another question, we have seen some delays in the deliveries of defense equipment such as the S-400. The original plan, if I am correct, it was supposed to have been completed by the end of 2023. Could you give us an update on that? What is happening? Thank you. Your Excellency, my name is Vikram. I am from Fortunate Business Advisory Company. We Indians are really sad that Honorable President Putin is not visiting India, one of the greatest friends of India. I have 2 points and would like your viewpoints on those. One is India-Russia, the other is on the global perspective. You have mentioned that even prior to the independence, Russia began its, people-to-people connect and diplomatic connections, and we are now sitting in the Amrit Kal, which is the aspirational age of India. Do you think something like tourism could be a game changer for both these countries? Both for people-to-people connect, employment, businesses. And my second aspect is, this year, in Sweden, the foundation today, what is the foundation? The foundation this year agreed to invite Belarus, Russia, and Iran as opposed to last year. Do you think that that's a positive development in the negotiations, in the dialogue perspective, that the world sees that dialogue and negotiation is the Nobel Foundation? I mean, the Nobel Foundation. Do you see that as a positive development for the dialogue and the peace process over in the global perspective? Thank you.
Thank you. Excellency Dr. Awad speaking. Just wanted to ask you a question with the flowing of the weapons to Ukraine non-stop till now, and uses of cluster bombs, which is internationally banned. And the Americans are saying that it has become more effective against the Russian forces, while Russia speaks of increasing the number of casualties in the because of the cluster bombs being used by Ukraine. My question is, with the unstopping of this war, I mean the continuity of it, do you see that it could be go wider than this? Maybe Russia thinks strategically of widening the conflict with the Ukrainian? Thank you.
Ambassador, I have a question. You know, the Indian Prime Minister told the Russian President that this is not the era of war. Now, Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin have their own strong viewpoints. Is there any possibility of Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin getting together, sitting across a table and discuss things? Number one. Number two, can Indians now go and use RuPay card and pay in Indian currency to use facilities in Russia?
Sir, Sandhya with ET. A quick one on is Russia okay to get on signing the Bali Declaration?
Okay.
Independent journalist. Ambassador, I'd like to know what do you believe are the next big steps that the global South can take for its development and the strengthening of its ties?
Within Global South, strengthening your ties within Global South. So many questions that I had the time to forget the first one on the on the grain deal. What was that? The grain deal. I have explained why the grain deal is not working. On attaining the objectives that we have put for ourselves, we are determined to achieve all the objections that we have put for ourselves. And this has to be taken into account by all players and all involved into the current conflict. As I have said, it's not a whim on the part of Russia that we have taken such decisions on Ukraine. We have been very open, have tried on many occasions in our dialogue with NATO and with the US and with Europeans on the security architecture in Europe. Some of them understand very well what has been going on. Some probably did not. But the gist is that we cannot live in Europe if there is a feeling of danger from someone towards another. If Russia feels a danger, if Europeans feel a danger from Russia, this is not a situation, this is not a stable situation. We cannot continue living with such dangers and constant fear of each other. It cannot be sustained, and we've been saying this very patiently to all the NATO members, that NATO cannot continue to expand eastwards because we feel a danger in that expansion. NATO doesn't hide the anti-Russia objectives that they have. All our arguments have been blatantly, very arrogantly dismissed for decades. We had warned while having those discussions, US and NATO, that ultimately, if we do not listen to each other, if we do not agree to an acceptable security architecture, ultimately the situation would erupt. And it has erupted. And besides that, this is only one part of the problem. When I say there is a complex, a very big complex of issues to the conflict that we have. This is only part of that. The other part is the illegitimate coup that happened in Ukraine in 2014. It was very openly supported by the US for their geopolitical or their own purposes. There is this, don't forget about it, there is this part of the problem, like the Nazi ideology in Ukraine. It may not be a sensitive issue to India, for example, or other countries, especially in the global south. For us, it is an unacceptable situation anywhere, especially in Russia and Ukraine. And what happened in Ukraine? The Nazis hijacked the government. These are not empty words when we say Nazis, and repeat about the Nazis in Ukraine. If you don't see those aspects of the conflict, then you don't understand anything what is happening. How can you report on that if you don't understand what is going on? And it seems like that not only the experts, media, the leaders of some countries do not understand what they're talking about, and what position they've been, they've taken of their countries towards the conflict. Then there are many aspects like the legality of Russia's actions in Ukraine. We've been very careful, I would to tell you very frankly. From the legal point of view, all our actions are very, very consistent with the international law. But it would never have happened if there wasn't this wasn't the launch of atrocities from the Kyiv regime that came to power in 2014 illegitimately. Had they not launched the atrocities and the open assault on the eastern parts of the country, we've been accused of being the first to do that. This is utter nonsense. This is pure propaganda, twisting of facts. All happened the other way around. We don't know, and probably, I mean, the majority of you and the readers do not know, or maybe forgot about many incidents in the eastern Ukraine and Donbas region since 2014, prior to the start of special military operations. Many instances of civilian deaths, rapes, of tortures, of bombardments. Who amongst you remember about the Eli Evangels in Donbas? The graveyard of children who perished in Kyiv bombardments of Donbas. The whole graveyard, hundreds of children. And that all was done by the Ukrainian side. Those are Russians by nationality. They appealed to us for help. And we responded to that. And besides them, half of Ukraine are Russians, but that's another question. Those people in Donbas, they requested they requested help and defense against Nazis who sat in Kiev. And Zelensky himself, the Jew, became a subordinate to those people who profess Nazi ideology. And the US, they very openly says that they've done a great job, a very cheap job of weakening Russia with Ukrainian lives without American lives, and it comes cheaper to them. You can, if you're such a hypocrite and the villain, you can keep those thoughts to yourself, but they will be expressed there. It's incredible. Okay.
You made 2 points as far as the possible solution of the crisis in Ukraine. You pointed out the other side, the Copenhagen set of new proposals which you cannot accept. But from your side, you made 2 points. One is this, constant expansion of NATO bordering your country. And then secondly, you said the treatment of the Russians in the eastern part of the Ukraine. Now for a solution, in the hypothetical thing, if the other side agrees and say that NATO will not be expanded and Ukraine would not become a member, will you consider some compromise on the territories that now are under your jurisdiction in Ukraine after the war?
I can say one thing of which I'm sure. Ukraine should be a neutral state. It should retain a neutral status. This is a first step to the solution as regards of the expansion. But there should be certainly other mutual agreements to find to resolve the conflict. We are open, very much open to the dialogue with NATO, but it should be a dialogue. It should be it should go in good spirit, develop in good spirit, with goodwill. And it has not. They have continued with the assertion that Russia cannot have a say as regards the security situation in Europe. Is this the approach? It is not. On tourism as a game changer in Russia-India relations, it may be certainly a game changer, and we are looking forward to expanding the flow of tourists both ways. The introduction of the electronic visas by India a decade ago was a very welcoming step, and we have been in Russia very extensively using this mechanism. From August this year, from the 1st of August, we have started a similar scheme, and it's now possible to apply electronically for the Russian visa. And besides that, we have been in discussion on the visa-free traveling between us. At the moment, we are aiming at groups of tourists, but later on can be an expanded visa-free agreement, but it is too early to to speak about the visa-free regime between us, and for the visa-free for the groups of tourists as well. We have just started the discussion and have not agreed on that yet. But the electronic visas, they now work both ways. Cluster bombs and the expansion of conflict, this is there is such danger. As we see, there is no intention of Ukraine and the US and other backers of Ukraine to truly and honestly start talking with us on peaceful solution. We have been very consistent and have repeated on many occasions. We are open for that. So far, no serious proposals and ideas towards that. Cluster bombs, they are very much illegal. They are illegal in the US, globally, Russia. But apparently, there are ways and explanations given so that the munitions are illegal, but in this particular case, they're acceptable. Very consistent. And a question connected with the previous one on no era of war. We're very much on the same page on that. It is indeed not an era of war. On the surface, Russia has made, or it seems to all, that it has made the first step. But if you dig in, it is a retaliation on our part to the aggression launched against us. And these words that Prime Minister has expressed last year, they should be addressed to Zelensky and to the US in the first instance. They do not show any intention to resolve the conflict peacefully, not us. On RuPay card and the RuPay system, we are very much open to that. I can confirm to you we are in discussion with India on the use of RuPay system in Russia. We have a similar system called MIR, which we're keen to promote in India. So it's a two ways process, and we are keen to launch it, but there have not been much progress on that. The discussion is going on. Some technical, very technical discussions are going on, and we're hopeful that it will have the continuation. And besides that, also speak about the UPI system for the use in Russia, and we have a similar that can be used in India. It would benefit both countries immensely. Benefit the flows of tourism, business would benefit from that. This is something that is a part of the larger, the discussion on transactions in between us. Delays of S-400 did happen. Singularly, there was because of the military aggravation in Ukraine. But after that, we have agreed mutually on a new timetable, and this timetable is being followed very, very meticulously. Supplies continue, and they will be concluded on time in as stipulated in the new agreements that we have on those supplies. Bali Declaration, the Bali Declaration cannot be repeated, because since Bali Declaration there were North Stream blasts, there were disruptions of this ammonia pipeline to Odessa, all very seriously aggravated the energy and food crises. There were revelations by the Westerners themselves, former prime ministers of some countries, that they intentionally disrupted the peace negotiations last year between Russia and Ukraine, and before that used those Minsk agreements to win time for Ukraine to build up militarily for full-scale military operations in the east of the country against those Donbas republics. Nothing besides the impact of sanctions and other aspects. Nothing of that was reflected in the Bali formula. Some of those things that I mentioned happened after the Bali summit last year. There is an obvious development of the situation, and if the West wants and insists to reflect the Ukrainian conflict in the declaration, then they should be open to change the para that there was, the Bali para, but they want to retain it. We do not agree with that. Yeah, and on Global South, can you remind me the question?
So I was asking you that what are the next big steps? What are the next big steps that you believe that the Global South must take or ought to take to strengthen ties within itself?
that would be some hypothetical projections of mine. I would like to refrain from that. But what we have seen so far, the BRICS expansion, namely, right? I think it is indicative of a wider trend that is gaining momentum. The global South is gaining position in world affairs. This is the trend that will continue, obviously. India has already, in my true opinion, has already become a global power, but its power will grow. It will become the permanent member of the UN Security Council. It will be one of the centers of decision-making very, very soon. I think it has all the capacity and the right to be the leader of the global South and to lead the process of democratization. I would put it like the democratization of international affairs. That presupposes a bigger role of Asia, a bigger role of Africa. I just recalled that, remembered that very recently the External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, while addressing the Business 20 gathering or somewhere else, maybe in an interview, he was at Business 20. He was he said that the developing world, the global South, has been a consumer, but it needs to be and is going to become a producer of ideas, of solutions, of decisions for the world. And I think it says it's all. And Russia, at present and before, has been a very staunch supporter of this trend. Always. Everything possible. But Zelensky forbade himself legally to speak with Russia. There is a law in Ukraine preventing negotiations with Russia. That's what I'm saying. The picture is very much complex. The Ukrainians passed a law sometime back, last year probably, that forbids negotiations with Russia. Theoretically, such meeting is possible, but you should ask Zelensky and the Ukrainians first. What are they going to do first for that to happen?
It's been sorry, no more questions. Time is up, sorry. It's been a very useful interaction, Excellency. Before I invite my colleague, Dr. Awad, to propose a vote of thanks, we would like to present a memento in appreciation of your visit to the FCC.
Thank you, Ambassador Denis Alipov. On behalf of the Foreign Correspondent Club and myself, we would like to thank you for accepting our invitation to be in the club, and thanks to the Russian Embassy for also coordinating with us on this issue. I think despite the fact that Russia has inherited a legacy from the former Soviet Union, but you were very frank to speak on a lot bilateral issues of both the countries, and that you have been strengthening the relation with India in all fields, which is very prominent. And I'm sure that with your position in India, your tenure, you will be very successful being already been in India. And there are lots of hope in your talk when we can notice and we can see from the crowd have come to the club. I wanted to also to thank our audience who have joined us in this discussion. And I would like all of you and just to keep track of the events in the club when coming. And if you quote His Excellency in any of your writing, please do mention that it is at the FCC he was speaking to the Foreign Correspondent Club. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.